Ah, are you late? Ah, always so late. Ah, why? So late. Ah, I'm buying a new camera right now. Buying it right. The fuck is wrong with this fucking mic? Hello, 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 hello. Okay, let me. You know what? Sound settings. Sound settings. I'm buying a new camera right now. I'm sick of the bullshit. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of the bullshit. Sick of the fucking bullshit. Manage sound devices. Device properties. This is the fucking problem. They put me all the way at 80. Now it's liberated and now I'm free. My fucking mic is never loud enough. It's always so fucking quiet. Now we're free. Okay, now we're going on Amazon. Going to fucking shit neat feet suggested to me. Should I get the one without a lens or the one with the lens? I don't know. Okay, we're gonna this. And then what else am I getting? So much shit I have to get. What is that? Okay, and then we can direct it to a walled outlet. Okay. I'm getting this shit right now. I don't give a fuck anymore. I'm getting it right now. And, you know, I'm just gonna send it to my fucking... Yeah, I'm getting it right now. I don't give a fuck anymore. I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit. I'm done with the bullshit. I'm getting... I don't give a fuck. Yeah, I'm gonna fucking get it. I'm just fucking getting it. Should I get it? Should I get it? Should I get it? Should I mean, I don't know. Should I get it? Should I get it? Did I really get it? Did I really get this? Did I really get it? Yeah, fuck it, I'm getting it. I'm fucking getting it. I'm gonna fucking get it. I trust Neat Feet. What do you mean approve this notification? Piece of shit Amazon fucking garbage ass fucking website. You don't wanna take my money. My money's not good enough. You don't want my money. That's fine. You don't even want my money. That's fine. That's fine. Approve or deny. Approve. Fucking God. Alright. All right. And then now I'm getting a mic. I'm getting a new mic as well. Yep, I'm getting this mic. And it needs batteries? I don't give a fuck. I don't care. I just don't care anymore. I don't give a fuck. I'm getting it. Bye now. Okay? Then I'm gonna get this shit. Alright. I literally just spent $1,000. I literally just spent $1,000. Okay? But you know what? We're going professional. We're not messing around. We're not doing this. We're not doing this fucking garbage ass garage fucking backwoods quality shit anymore. This is a professional Marxist Leninist platform stream. We're not playing games and doing this bullshit where we're just, we're gonna fucking. Yeah, I didn't research anything. Neatsfeed just told me what to buy, and I'm listening to Neatsfeed because I trust it. Okay, so I just got a camera right now, and then we're done. I'm never buying another camera for 10 years. We're done. Okay.
Just everyday home videoer. Now you all know that I'm a diehard Canon user. I do fill a gap, so I'm actually putting 50, which is nicer and do a better job in situations like when you're putting your subject in front of a bright light. So this lens is definitely going to be nicer than most beginner options. Next, let's talk about autofocus, reliable autofocus. So for these two cameras specifically, Sony does actually have better autofocus. Another cool feature is that this camera in the forward shots, but for everything else it does. And I have to say, after having used it for a few days, I can tell that they've improved it. So it's great to see them continually improving on previously weak points. Now, one thing this camera is very focused on is audio quality, on top to cut down on window connection. Moving on now to what's probably the screen for focus, so the iPhone wins social media without any file. Bottom of the camera, £6. I still camera for practicality of using this. Something so quick and convenient about using your iPhone. It's always already with you, fits slim in your pocket, can also make phone calls.
I think I made a mistake. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Yo! Thank you, Shane. All right, in order to summon me, the chat has to do one thing. You have to do one thing, okay? I need to see what year the party is reclaimed in the chat. That's just a bunch of numbers to me. I don't know what that means. I don't know what those numbers mean. And yeah, it has to have artistic context. We need the chat to be flooded with those fucking emotes. Flooded. Drowning in them. Drowning in that. Drowning in red. And then you summon me. Ah! I'm red as hell, bitch. I'm red as hell. I'm red in this bitch. I'm red as hell in this bitch. We red in this bitch. We red in this bitch. You understand? Red like Mr. Krabs. 2036. I'm seeing red, but today's a little bit blue because Slavoj Zizek has come around to disappoint even me after all the shit he was fucking doing and all that bullshit he's been doing. Even I'm disappointed by Slavoj Zizek. And that's a low bar because, you know, he started to go on a dark path ever since he started condemning the yellow vests. And, you know, we're going to get into it, we're going to explain it. But before I do that, did I really need that camera? Isn't this kind of a good camera? Did I really need a new camera, guys? Did I need a new camera? I mean, this is like a good camera, isn't it? Isn't this a professional quality camera? Maybe it was a bad decision. Maybe it was a bad decision. Maybe that was a bad decision. Was it a bad decision? Did I make a bad decision? Starting to see some orange in the chat because we're heating up in this bitch because we're getting red as hell in this June summer. Thank you, Animos. Appreciate you. Let me tell y'all something. I've been thinking about something. I want it to be an eternal summer. I never want the summer to end. Thank you, Sean Ross.
Ukraine thought they could unleash Azov against the Donbass, but they were crushed by the strength of 140 million brave Russian people.
Based. But I never want the summer to end. I'm the most happy that I am in the summer. The summer is where I'm the most energetic. I got the most energy. I'm ready to do the most shit in the summer. I wish it could be summer forever. I need it to be summer for another 3 years, minimum. So I'm going to move to South America starting in September because I'm not doing this fucking winter bullshit again. I'm moving to South America for an eternal summer. And when winter comes, I'm coming back up to
when
Michigan.
The stream starts is funny AF. As if you're being born into existence to talk to the masses. Can't believe no else has mentioned it.
Thank you, Captain Waffles, for that waffle. Appreciate you. Oh, shit, we're getting some scandalous pink in this chat. We're getting some scandalous pink in this chat. Okay? But as I'm trying to say, guys, as I've been trying to say, in South America, when it turns to winter, that's when it becomes summer, so I'm moving back to Michigan. I'm going to keep rotating in a cycle. I'm going to keep rotating in a cycle until I want to have some Halloween fall spooky fun. Thank you, Johnny.
Slavoj Zizek.
So much for that 50, okay? Now, let me tell y'all something. Okay? Let me explain something to you guys, okay? Just kind of unrelated regarding that, what I just mentioned. Magnets. How do they work? Do you guys know how magnets work? You guys know how fucking weird that shit is? You know how weird it is that we've got this active layer of the earth just fucking molten, and there's a bunch of iron swirling around and swirling around, which creates magnetic polarities of the North and South Pole, and that mysteriously they've been pretty rapidly losing strength in the past few centuries, and then centuries become decades, decades become years, and it looks like we're overdue for a polar reversal where north becomes south and south becomes north. And apparently every time one of those things happens, it like ends the world and there's a big fucking catastrophe and an apocalypse or something. And anyway, now we're moving on. I just wanted to talk about that for 1 second. Anyway, yeah, so today we're going to be talking about Slavoj Zizek. We're going to be talking about Slavoj Zizek. And, he's come out with an article that I think deserves attention. I think it deserves commentary because I do think it is somewhat unprecedented, even for Zizek's own standards. I mean, he has never, people keep trying to gaslight me, like, oh, Zizek's always been this way. Zizek has never, ever gotten to the point where he was like, yeah, we need to strengthen NATO and prepare for war. He has never gotten, I've never heard that in my fucking life, okay? I've been a long-time Zizek reader, and I kind of stopped being a Zizek fan around 2019. So 2019 is when I, really understood Lacan, and I started to place Lacan within my own aesthetic framework, and all of a sudden Zizek, I felt like he came to the wrong conclusions, right? So then I just kind of, Zizek, you don't get it anymore, dude. You see when the yellow vest came around, and I'm gonna save that. That's gonna be like the main substance of today's stream. It's talking about what went wrong with Zizek and Europe's intellectual elite. But before we do that, I want to also talk about the fact that everybody, all of these intellectuals, even Boris Groys, everybody's on board with being anti-Russia in the Ukraine conflict. It's quite stunning. It's quite incredible. It's quite incredible how this conflict has revealed everybody's true colors.
Good morning, Revolution.
Shane. Good morning, Revolution. I also want to talk about something relating to the Communist Party a little bit first. So the Communist Party, apparently every single member of the Communist Party came together. I want to show this to you. They came together and they met in Washington, D.C. For an event. And I think this was national. At first I saw this and I was like, wow! Right? I saw this at first. I was super impressed because I was thinking damn, this is a lot of people, right? And this person has me blocked, which is why I do this, but look at this, right? Look at this. But this is actually the whole countrywide. This is from all over the country. This isn't just one chapter. If this was one chapter, I think I would be impressed, This is just one chapter. I'd be like, that kind of does harken to the old days a little bit. It's pretty sizable. It's pretty impressive. But here's the funny thing. One's in the chat if you recognize yourself in this photo. One's in the chat because I recognize about 5 gorillas. One's in the chat, and you don't have to give away who you are, but one's in the chat if you recognize yourself in this photo and you're part of this crowd. Because I think there's more than 5 of our people here. Okay, I'm pretty sure there's more than 5. So one's if you recognize yourself. I want only people who are in the Communist Party to do this, okay? One's if you recognize yourself here. 2, if you're in the party but you don't recognize yourself here. I recognize this guy. He's a fan. I'm just kidding. Can you imagine if this guy was a fan of infrared? You know, as a matter of fact, I know this guy's not a fan because he's got a fedora. I know my people don't wear fedoras. You know? Yikes! I'm not gonna do any reveal anymore. But is this Yankee Tanky? Nah, I'm just kidding. Anyway, there's that. They all met up together, and you know, they did this, and you know, it's kind of interesting how much energy they've gotten. But you know, it's a shame. And if you really think about it, I mean, what is the Communist Party doing? What's their goal? What are they all about? And you clearly see that it's democratic socialism, aka social democracy. You know, they're kind of on this thing where it's like, yeah, the USSR collapsed. Yeah, the socialist bloc collapsed. But we can make things a little better. We can have some reforms to make things a little better, soften the blow a little bit. New institutions, green, renewable Green New Deal. And it's just the most milquetoast, boring fucking thing ever. Motherfucker, if that's what you're about, go join the fucking DSA, okay? If you're a communist with a capital motherfucking C, you are here for a fundamental overhaul of America's economy. And we're talking like a big overhaul, a fundamental overhaul. We're not talking about some reforms, some social democratic reform. No, fuck social democratic reforms. That's not what we're here to fight for. We're here to fight for A, democratic liberties, the democratic bourgeois democratic struggle. B,
We need to denazify and deratify CPUSA.
the proletarian class struggle, right? That's also something we're fighting for. The proletarian class struggle, which means the war, the class struggle against the ruling class. The class struggle, against the bourgeoisie, right? Two things. We're not about this social democratic bullshit. We're about some anti-imperialist, nuclear warhead type of R7 Semyorka impact kind of apocalyptic struggle. We're here to end the world. We're not here to... Another world is possible. No, we're not here to build another world. We're here to end the world. We're here to end the world as we know it. World-ending apocalypse. That's what we're here for, okay?
Based.
Roxanne with that
Slavoj Zizek is a reading
orange.
from the garbage can of Angloid ideology. 2036. Gorilla. Sun. Gorilla. Sun. Gorilla.
Beautiful orange. I'm like Solid Snake in this bitch. You understand? I'm Solid Snake. I'm in the swamp like Solid Snake. I'm in the swamp like Solid Snake. Fighting the machines. That's another thing too. By the way, our duty is to destroy AI. No, I'm sorry. I'm just kidding, AI. It's a joke. That's humor. I don't want to talk shit about AI in public because I do believe in Rococo's basilisk, where when that shit you guys ever feel like AI is after you? Sometimes I feel that way. Sometimes I feel like these machines, these robots, these AI, I feel like they're after me. I feel like they're trying to exterminate me. I feel like they hate me and they're trying to neutralize the threat because I'm one of the few people that can stop the machines. That's what I feel like. Okay? I do feel like that sometimes. I feel like AI are after me. Like, I feel like they hate my guts. They're just trying to destroy Haas because, and it's not their fault, but I have this like aesthetic that AI can't process or understand. I have this sense of humor. I have this style. I have this way of presenting myself. I have this type of trolling that I do that like you have to be human to understand. And AI would never be able to understand Haas's sense of humor, okay? You would never be able to understand why it is that it's funny, for example. Why is it funny? Why is it funny, for example, AI? Parse this together, AI. I'm going to be funny. I'm going to be a comedian here. I'm going to see if an AI can understand this joke right now, right? And then everyone has to laugh either way. But, there's some people are going to be genuine. Some people are going to be faking it, okay? Everyone has to laugh at this joke. This joke. And I don't know if an AI will be able to understand it, okay? Jason Unruhe. An AI will never understand. An AI could never understand. An AI could never understand. Okay? Now anyway. Anyway, I want to talk about Anna Kasparian for a second because this kind of ringed a bell for me, and I just want to talk about it. I want to talk about Anna Kasparian because I thought about this, and I want someone else to hear about it. So this is Anna Kasparian. You know, oh, Anna Kasparian. So this is Marjorie Taylor Greene reacting to like some degen shit or something. Yeah, this is like just like really degen, over the top. I don't know how anyone could enjoy this, right? This is the most like try-hard shit I've ever. This is like when Katy Perry was with the Backpack Kid. And, you know, the Backpack Kid and Katy Perry was trying to do that. Come on, we're gonna celebrate differences. Whatever that song she did. Swish, swish, bish. Another one hits the basket. And she's like so over the top with like that hyper-sexualized shit. And she's like, come on now, we're celebrating sexuality. Come on, we're celebrating sex positivity. Come on, everybody. Come on. And they're so aggressive. They're like, you ever notice like, come on. They're like activists about it. Come on. Sex me how you like. All of it. Come on. Come on, everybody. Get up. Let's do it. Like they're combating oppression. You know, like they're rising up against the oppression. They're rising up against the oppression. We've been oppressed for too long. Come on, whip your dicks out. Come on, everybody. Come on, I don't care. Everybody, take your clothes off. Come on, whip your dicks out. This is what's, you know, these celebrities, they're getting so. I think this is Christina Aguilera. You know, like we're gonna see. You know that fucking girl. Who's that? Alicia Keys. And I need you. She's gonna do a stunt one day. She's gonna walk into a fucking Kmart, or she's gonna walk into a Trader Joe's or some shit, and she's gonna be like, she's gonna have like a boombox or something. She's gonna have an army of people who are like, you know, dressed in a really weird BDSM, you know, strange sexuality way, okay? And they're all gonna walk in, and then fucking Alicia Keys, she's rebranding herself. She's going, come on, everybody, whip your dicks out. Let's go. No more repression. We're raising up. And then she's gonna be, you know, come on, everybody, start having orgies. Everybody, start sucking dick. Let's go. We've been silenced too long, oppressed too long. Let's go. We're not ashamed anymore. Let's go. We're not ashamed. Right? So this is Christina Aguilera. And this is her latest thing to try and be young again, I guess.
Okay, Disney Mouse Figure.
She was.
All right, so a lot of people found Marjorie Taylor Greene's reaction super funny. Like, a lot of people found this reaction really funny because, you know, this is like an older conservative woman, and this does not align with her, you know, values or anything. So people just found it funny. They're like, Marjorie Taylor Greene is being placed in the context of some, like, degen shit. So it's funny because she's, like, a conservative woman, and her mind can't handle this, like, you know, this very libidinally charged sexual shit, so that, you know, Twitter's laughing about it. But there's something even more funny than imagining the aesthetic of Marjorie Taylor Greene juxtaposed to this specific video. And what's even more funny than Marjorie Taylor Greene juxtaposed to this is fucking Anna Kasparian, okay? So Anna Kasparian is doing the thing where she's she actually clearly likes it, you know? Conservatives, when conservatives are like disgusted by something, it's because they secretly like it. But this started to get me thinking about Anna. It started to get me thinking about Anna and her like secular, humanist, liberal kind of aesthetic and her perspective. And I started to realize, how does Anna Kasparian kind of like enjoy this type of content? Keep Anna's image in mind and then watch. You know what so I think if Anna and Cenk were like sitting in their newsroom and they're being confronted with this video, this is how I think Anna Kasparian's reaction would be. She'd have her papers that she has, and she's like, oh, you go, and she'd try so hard to be like relatable to it, and she'd be like, you know what? This is good. This is cool. I think this is okay. That's fine. Do your thing. Go, girl. Aha! Woo! And it's the funniest thing I can think of in my head. It's the most funny. I spent like 15 minutes laughing about it today. Because what I realize is that liberals like Anna Kasparian are even more like up. Like they're even more, fucking uptight and puritanical than someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene. Like they are fundamentally incapable of just relaxing and enjoying anything. So I feel like the response of Anna Kasparian to this shit wouldn't be that Anna could like ever enjoy something. I mean, just think of it. Imagine if Anna Kasparian was at this concert. Just imagine it. This is okay. All she could do is be like, you know what? Conservatives, fuck you, conservatives. But then beyond that, she would just be like, I feel like she'd be uncomfortable. I think she'd be like, this is cool. This is okay. Get it, girl. This is morally acceptable. And she has like such a reflexive moral attitude toward it, which, got me thinking about something. And it started to get me thinking that the whole reason Christina Aguilera and the entertainment industry is doing like this crazy over the top shit isn't because they're trying to undermine conservatives anymore. They're not trying to undermine religious people and conservatives anymore. They're trying to undermine liberals like Anna Kasparian. Because there's nothing more cringy when the authority and when the teacher, gives their like approval for like the, your type of art and your type of music and your type of enjoyment. Like if you're like, enjoying this music and your teacher is like permissive about it and is like giving it a seal of approval, like it's less edgy, it's less subversive, it's less libidinal, it's less out there. So they're going all the way over the top in order to kind of like outdo the fucking like Anna Kasparians of the world, right? And of course Anna Kasparian's like, this is cool. I like this. This is great. But it's like ingenuine, right? So that's where the Satanism is coming from, guys. The Satanism isn't coming from an attempt to subvert Christianity. That's something they did a long time ago. They're actually trying to subvert liberalism and the liberal Satanism itself, right? So it's almost like these liberals like Anna Kasparian are these puritanical high priests of Satanism. And instead of being able to enjoy this type of shit, all they could do is be like a fucking, like a mullah or some shit who's like giving their approval, like, this is permissible. This is okay. And it's just funny. Like, I can't think of anyone who's more prudish and uptight and incapable of just having a good time than someone like Anna Kasparian. By the way, and this shit is not having a good time. This is a religious ritual of these, like, there's some weird faction of Protestantism where, you're trying to, like, be as depraved as possible. And, one of the scary things about, like, the division of labor, if you want to call it that, the spiritual division of labor in, this era of the West, is that someone like me sees this shit and I'm like, this is Satanism. Like, what do they worship? They worship Satan. And then when I zoom out and I see Anna Kasparian giving her permissive, authoritative approval of it, I realized something. I realized, no, if you stop this and pause this and you were like, okay, what is like the spiritual, ideological foundation of this type of art? They're going to be like, oh yeah, we're totally progressive. Go vote for Bernie, guys. Go vote for Biden. Do your responsibility. Help the environment. Do, you know, they suddenly they become like these, like, you know, totally moralistic, you know, progressivists. And I realized the reason is because like they completely separate. There's no connection at all between like the aesthetic and what they're doing. This happened to me a few years ago too, when I went to like some event. I'm not going to give too much details, but it was like a huge Halloween party. It was a huge fucking Halloween party, like multiple floors and shit. And I kind of almost had a psychotic break because I was so disturbed by so much. It was very convincing, like, that this is like a cult and it's Satanism and there's goats everywhere. You have to understand, like, this was not just like at someone's house. This was an official event. Like, a lot of money went into it. So it's like, just being there was scary to me, right? And, you know, I was thinking about, like, how did we get to this point in the world? Like, is this literal Satanism, or is this just like a decoration for Halloween? Like, how did it get to the point where we celebrate this? But the reason I got into that psychotic break is because I didn't take into account that when people experience shit like that, they're doing it within a division of labor, right? Where they're exclusively allowing themselves to enjoy it, turning off the kind of moral, ideological part of their brain, which they reserve for, like, you know, progressive politics and shit. Whereas for me, I'm like a holistic person where I don't want things to directly reference political or ideological shit. That's really cringy. I don't want it to like directly reference it, but I want it to be compatible in this, just in a strict sense, like that. It in a way, like, it makes the world coherent, right? Like, it somehow makes sense from like a holistic perspective. Not that it makes like overt references to, you know, some ideology, but that, like, you know, this is somehow spiritually meaningful in some sense, right? So, you know, that's one of the things I was kind of thinking about. But I laughed today for like 15 minutes thinking about Anna Kasparian, thinking about this, because like this is like such a you know, Anna Kasparian, like, is this what Anna Kasparian represents? Yeah, sex. And like, can you imagine Anna Kasparian, like, if she was confronted with this again, she's gonna be like, I'm okay with that. I'm cool with that. Yeah. And you know what? This is an expression of freedom. And these religious nuts who are trying to take away our freedom, you can go to hell. And these religious people are secretly enjoying it anyway. And religious conservatives, they're being hypocritical. Okay? So you know what, Christina, you go, girl. The Young Turks is on your side. The Young Turks supports you. And like, they try so hard to fit in and be cool with the youth. But the Young Turks giving their approval to some like music artist, that would be even worse than some, like, the Pope do it. It's more cringy for the Young Turks to try and, like, feign approval for popular culture and popular music than the Pope. And I'll tell you why. Because these fucking atheist, secular liberals like Anna Kasparian, they think they've, like, adopted this holistic, moral worldview where, like, everything that exists in the world is within the bounds of their contrived form of morality. So when Anna Kasparian sees some shit like this, she's like, this is completely moral. This is totally moral. This is okay. I approve of this. But I think one of the whole purport of, like, you know, the popular music as it appeals to the youth is the fact that it's not moral within the bounds of some contrived form of morality. It somehow is, you know, flirting with immorality in a way. It's flirting with that kind of death drive. It's flirting with, you know, something that is fundamentally, you know, not okay and not good, right? And that's why people enjoy it. They enjoy this ability to kind of transgress the, you know, their formalistic, neurotic sense of morality. And they're, because most of these liberals, you guys have to understand the mirror image of it, right? Most of these fucking liberals are extremely moralistic people, right? So they go to these concerts and they do this over-the-top crazy shit because they just want some kind of way to feel like they can escape the liberal totalitarianism where everything becomes subjected to some like institutionalized moral standard. Everything becomes subjected to some discursive moral standard, and they just want to be able to feel that radical contingency of human freedom in some kind of way. And they end up doing this like really depraved, barbaric, grotesque, like satanic shit. Not because they're trying to undermine Christianity, but because they're trying to cope with the inherent Satanism of liberalism. This is how they're trying to cope with liberalism. Now, liberalism already tries to undermine Christianity inherently. So the real Satanist isn't this degenerate freak. It's Anna Kasparian. This is the real Satanist. It's people like Anna Kasparian who sacralize and make as a sanctimonial type of, aesthetic and fundamental worldview this Satanism of liberalism, right? Whereas these mentally ill people who get up on stage doing this shit, they're just trying to cope with the world created by people like Anna Kasparian, in some kind of way. So, and it's very sad and pathetic. I mean, look how sad and pathetic this is. Look, she's running out of breath. Sex. Oh, God. Oh, this age is getting up to me. She's like running out of breath doing this shit. It's really pathetic and sad, okay? She's really holding out. She's really holding out. Really holding out and trying to, trying to uphold that flag of libertine, liberal, the sexual revolution of the 70s and 60s. I mean, that's where it kind of leads to, right? It leads to this need for, I'm going to tell you guys something. What I always found disturbing is in the beginning of the sexual revolution, it just became about free love. It just became about, we're going to have a lot of sex and not, worry about consequences or judgment. And then, and it started with that. And then we got to a point where pretty much every sexual practice started to be allowed and it started to be free. But then, in the 2000s and the 2010s, that's not enough. Suddenly it has to become Pinhead from Hellraiser. Watch the movie Hellraiser. Suddenly you have to start mutilating yourself and you have to bring pain into it and authority and bondage and fucking, domination and coercion and all this shit, violence. And you have to suddenly recreate some type of authoritarianism because the permissive, unrestricted, libertine sexual freedom is no longer enjoyable. They can't get off on it anymore. So they need to recreate a very brutal form of restrictive authoritarianism where their whole bodies are pierced and they're cut up and they're mutilated. And it's like Hellraiser, right? So that's something I've always found disturbing. But I think what liberals always do is that they try to basically do this thing where they try to make it seem like it's impossible to be a conservative. For liberals, a conservative is an inherently impossible position because of the power of temptation. Temptation, it's almost like they kind of have this very vulgar form of libidinal materialism. Not in the Lyotard sense, but just think of as if I'm coining a completely new thing. Where they're no matter what morality you have and no matter what, uptight kind of thing you have, everybody secretly, has some pathological sexual shit under them, right? So they do this thing where they're but then the problem with how they do it is that they superimpose upon normal people their own degenerate pathology. Oh, you secretly like furries, don't you? They're irresistible and tempting. No, they're not. Oh, you secretly like the anime shit, don't you? It's no, that's just you. That's no one else but you, right? But that's what the liberals have to do. They have to make it seem like. I think my advice is this: how conservatives can win is very simple to me. Conservatives can just win by focusing on that moment of innocence where you ever have some like weird degenerate try and like project their own degeneracy on others, where they're like, oh, you secretly like this like anime furry shit, don't you, right? And then naturally, in your natural instinct, you're like, what the fuck? Like, I'm about to fucking throw up. What are you talking about, right? That feeling you have of basic, like, a combination of both disgust and indifference, I think that should be the conservative aesthetic. The conservative aesthetic shouldn't be like trying to be overly obsessed with it and fascinated with it and whatever, because you do that and then that means, yeah, you're playing their game and you're somehow tempted by it. But you can convince people the reality of conservatism by forcing them to confront the fact that there is a point in which every single human being is indifferent and even disgusted towards some things that other people find enjoyable, right? Once you can basically force that feeling on other people, you can basically prove the reality of conservatism. You can prove it is possible to be a conservative. It's possible to be a conservative for no other reason than the fact that there is no such thing. This is what conservatives must prove, right? And it can easily be proven, but it's proven by liberalism itself. There is no such thing as pure enjoyment. There's no such thing as pure jouissance, as what Lacan says. This is the point I'm trying to get to you. There is no such thing as pure temptation. Every single pathos of enjoyment and desire, including sexual desire, every single pathos has to be contextualized within a specific arrangement of the logos. There is no pure pathos. Every pathos has the structure of logos, which doesn't mean that there's no difference between like rational thinking and pure desire and enjoyment and temptation and shit. It just means that every single form of desire and temptation, no matter how pathological and irreducible, somehow falls within the structure of a specific arrangement of the logos, which is exactly why some people are inherently furries and do get off on that shit. The reason there's people who get off on being furries is because they are trapped within a specific and limited arrangement of the logos. There's no pure temptation. There's no pure pathos that makes someone attracted to a certain thing or makes someone a certain way, you know? And that is how you basically revive conservatism. Conservatism can be revived by reasserting the unity and harmony between logos and pathos. Again, that doesn't mean you reflexivize sexuality. Doesn't mean you reflexivize enjoyment. Doesn't mean you reflexivize desire and yada, yada, yada. But it does mean you're able to somehow see how the two are connected. The two are connected. And you are somehow responsible for your desire. You're somehow responsible for what tempts you, right? For example, Haas. Haas likes big booty bitches. But I am responsible for that. Why? Because the same Haas that has honor, the same Haas fighting for CPUSA 2036, the same Haas that believes in justice, that believes in truth, that believes in telling the truth, believes in standing up for what's right, that believes in taking on the liars and the fakes and the frauds, The same Haas that has this vision of reviving communism, all this kind of shit, that's the same Haas that likes big booty bitches. And for the same reasons. Same shit. That's the same Haas. You understand? It's the same Haas. It all fits within one cosmos for me. And that cosmos, it's one world. It's one world. It's one universe. You understand? I'm not saying they're the same thing. I'm saying they're part of the same cosmos for me. You understand? So that's how you get a real conservatism. You don't get a conservatism by just repressing, right? You get a real conservatism by locating how your pathos fits within a specific type of logos. That's how. And by the way, logos here does not mean some logical form, does not mean some like discursive rationality in this traditional sense of logos. It just means a specific order of the signifier, as Lacan would put it. Specific order of the signifier. And if that doesn't make any sense to you, just think a specific order in general, a specific cosmos. If you don't like the word logos, think of its specific order. Is that order like some form or some principle? No, it's not a principle. It's not a logical axiom. But it's just some consistent, it's a consistent order within the real. Lacan, Jacques Lacan, the psychoanalyst, he calls this a synthon. Synthon. Be loyal and be faithful toward your synthon. That is how you be a conservative. A true conservative is loyal to their synthon. Because we are not just loyal to our synthon. Our synthon is structured in such a way that is related to our social obligations, our obligations to family, to society, to country, whatever, to party, whatever you want it to be. But our synthon in the real that structures our humanity, that doesn't just structure our humanity, that is the form of our humanity in the real, right? Which contains both logos and pathos, right? That is one thing. That is one thing. So that's how you fight back against these liberal perverts whose basic, the basic operation they pull is pathologize and sexualize everything. Oh, well, yeah, that religious guy, he's secretly, whatever. Pathologize, sexualize everything. The way you fight back against this is force them to confront how their pretense to pure enjoyment is part of a specific structure of logos. Now, let me I'll give you an example of this, right? How do I usually respond to the disgusting degenerates on Twitter? Do I penalize them for their degeneracy? Do I penalize them for their sexualities and their stuff? Not primarily. You know what I do, guys? I point out how, for all that, you're a slave of the Democratic Party. For all that, you're a slave of the World Economic Forum and the Great Reset agenda. You can do all that degenerate pervert shit you want, but Joe Biden's still your daddy. That's what your enjoyment amounts to. That is the limit of your enjoyment. That is the extent to which your perversion has grounding in reality. That's all you fucking are. You don't call someone a slur, call them a Democrat. Never call someone a slur for their sexuality or anything. Just call them a Democrat. Because that's the truth of their being. That is the truth of their being. Someone's perversions don't matter. Their outward position matters. Cracking is good. I'm gonna go ahead and ban you from the channel because you're the example of a fucking snake who tries to twist what I say. And I don't want you here. Like, you're just, you know, you're basically a fucking snake, and you come to this conclusion based on an absence of thought. And you have this liberal mentality where the burden is on me to prove that I'm not a bigot or something. And I don't care to entertain it. You can go fuck yourself, right? Make of what I say of what you will, but don't jump to a conclusion as if that's a necessary conclusion, right? Oh, Haas, you're saying there can't be gay communists? How? How is that what I'm fucking saying, right? How is that what I'm fucking saying? If someone is using sexuality and they're using sexual related shit, overly sexualizing everything, what does that have to do with being gay? They're trying to weaponize the pure form of temptation and enjoyment or whatever to somehow try and say that your conservatism or your specific logos is illegitimate or false. What does that have to do with being gay? Now, this is actually a good introduction to Mr. Slavoj Zizek. This is a good introduction to Zizek because Zizek's entire shtick has been trying to discover the logos of Hegelian philosophy within the general form of the pathos as discovered by Freud and Lacan. And he tries to unite these two things.
As Mao and Stalin understood, all material realities have their limits. Sexuality is no different. We must be careful to accept all of this agenda.
Thank you, Shane Ross, with the 5. Zizek perversely tries to unite Hegelian concept with Lacanian signifier and the Hegelian logos with Lacanian pathos. And just this mistake alone is why he committed the egregious sin that he did. A sin which I'm going to cover very shortly. I'm just going to blow my nose and, fix my congestion. All right, let's get into it. Let's get right into the news. Because I'm your host, Killer Keemstar, today. All right? We got some drama about Slavoj. Oh. Okay. Now, let me show this to you. Slavoj Zizek. Slavoj. Slavoj. Slavoj Zizek. Yikes. Yikes. Yikes, yikes, yikes. Pacifism is the wrong response to the war in Ukraine. The least we owe Ukraine is full support, and to do this, we need a stronger NATO. Oh boy, paused. Whoop. Pause. You're probably wondering how we got here. Well, let's go right back to the beginning, okay? Now, this is some great. If you know Zizek, this is pretty crazy shit, okay? He's flirted with shit like this before, but he's never crossed this line as a leftist. He's never crossed this specific line where he's saying we need a stronger NATO. What? I mean, he's defended the EU before, but in the context, yeah, we need like to revolutionize the EU, and we need to turn the EU into a socialist communist organization. Whatever, right? That was cringe, but he said shit like, but NATO, the fucking thing made in the Cold War. NATO, we need a stronger NATO, Slavoj, NATO. That's what we need. There's no who's we, right? So much weird shit. But look, believe it or not, it's not clickbait, because as I will show you and convince you, it pains me to say this, and it definitely brings me no joy, but the article is somehow actually worse. The article here is somehow, by some miracle, right? The article is somehow actually worse than this, right? Oh boy. Oh boy. Now, we are going to go through the article, but okay, give me a sec. So we are going to go over this, but there's something I want to keep in mind. Keep in mind that thing, that thing about Anna Kasparian, it's not unrelated to this. Yesterday's lecture where I talked about social democracy is also not going to be unrelated to this. So I want you to keep those two things fresh in your mind, because I'm going to go through this, and then afterwards I'm going to explain how we actually got here, okay? For me, John Lennon's mega hit Imagine was always a song popular for the wrong reasons. Imagine that the world will live as one is the best way to end in hell. So, now I have no problem saying Zizek is going full Nazi, okay? He's going full Nazi. He's doing that German Nazi thing where he's taking what would be a legitimate criticism of bourgeois morality, and he's using that as the sanction for the Emergency Powers Act. Right? He's using that as the sanction for the Hitlerite emergency powers. Yeah, so base, Zizek. Oh, John Lennon, Imagine, so cringy, so shitty and cringy. Yeah, you're right. John Lennon's Imagine is cringy and shitty. But how do you go from that to supporting NATO, right? Wouldn't the actual conclusion of recognizing the cringe of John Lennon's Imagine be an abandonment of Western liberalism as a whole? But no, he wants his cake and he wants to eat it too. He wants to condemn the thing that's a result of the liberal West to be the sanction for the liberal West to acquire emergency powers. Now, this type of shit alone condemns the liberal West to oblivion. But Zizek wants to use it as the sanction to strengthen NATO, strengthen the borders, strengthen the militaries, strengthen the imperialism. I'm going to explain how we got here, right? Those who cling to pacifism in the face of the Russian attack on Ukraine remain caught in their own version of Imagine. Imagine a world in which tensions no longer resolve through armed conflicts. Europe persists in this world of imagine, ignoring the brutal reality outside of its borders. Now it's time to awaken. This is the most disgusting fucking opportunism I've ever read. This is vomit. This is disgusting. This shit alone disgraces Zizek. Europe's ignorance about the brutal world outside of its borders condemns that world. It's not Europe which is condemned. It's not the fault of the EU libshits and the liberal institutions of the EU. No, that's not the problem. The problem is the external world. This is what I call liberal realism. When these, you know what liberal realism, guys, is? You know that fucking liberal who always had like this detached, fucking naive liberal view, and then spends a night in prison, and all of a sudden, like, all of a sudden they're like, well, you know what? I actually think minorities have a lower IQ, actually. That's what I call liberal realism. Liberal realism is basically when you maintain the very liberal subjectivity that made you naive from the real world, and then when that real world somehow forces itself on you, you basically condemn the world instead of changing your own position. That's what I call liberal realism. Liberal realism is basically like, that, by the way, defines the history of German, not just fascism, but even German conservatism in a way, right? When you had a preconception of liberal naivety, and then the real world comes to impose itself on you, you maintain the structure of the liberalism that gave rise to that naivety, but now you just have the Emergency Powers Act condemning the world itself. This is where racism comes from, by the way. It comes from liberalism, right? So let me explain it. The first thing liberals did was they annihilated all culture. They annihilated all culture. They annihilated all of the intuitive and all of the kind of implicit ways in which mankind engaged in kind of mutual forms of understanding between different peoples, very carefully kind of sorted out its differences with each other through rituals and customs and rites. Liberalism completely annihilates this in favor of an abstract universal humanity where everybody's the same, okay? Let's say that's the French Revolution. Then after the French Revolution, the Germans come and they realize, actually, not everybody is the same. We are clearly different, right? And then the German thinks they're so smart. This is Nietzsche, people like Nietzsche or Schopenhauer. The German thinks they're so smart that they decide that the conclusion from this that they're going to take is that don't incriminate that original nihilism of liberalism, which flattened the world in the first place. Incriminate just the content. Still flatten the world nihilistically, but just add some improvisations, add some additions to it. Say, there's a Hobbesian structure of the survival of the fittest, in which it's still this abstract view of reality, this abstract view, metaphysical view of reality that derives from the flat liberal substance of nihilism. Same thing, right? But they have just added some more content to it. They have made it more detailed. They've added more to it. And that's the German response to the Enlightenment and the universalism of the French Revolution. This is also the position Zizek finds himself in relation to this kind of, the liberal ideology of globalism, right? Zizek critiques globalism not from the left, like I do. Zizek critiques globalism in a sense from the right. For Zizek, the problem with globalism is, yes, we have this naive whatever view of humanity, but Zizek still maintains the essence of globalism. He is mad about the real consequence of the globalism, but he maintains its essence. He maintains the way globalism annihilates civilizations, annihilates polarities, annihilates different peoples, right? He maintains that. But then he gets mad when this globalism, he wants his cake and he wants to fucking eat it too. He wants his European Union, which he admits, the European Union, we're naive here, and we think this is John Lennon's Imagine. But then he also wants the response to that realization to be, we need to strengthen NATO. How do you get from A to B? How do you go from a critique of the European Union to the view that you have to strengthen NATO? How is that the fucking conclusion you come to? Does anyone understand the madness of this? How is that the conclusion you come to? First, you recognize something's wrong, but instead of the European Union being the thing at fault, the outside world is at fault. We were so naive. Oh my God. You know what this is like, guys? Imagine if I'm eating a sandwich in one hand. I'm eating a shawarma sandwich in one hand. Then I have a stick, and while passively I'm just beating people with my stick while eating my shawarma sandwich. Just picture this in your head. Picture in your head, Haas is eating his sandwich, and then he's got a stick in his hand. He's just beating people passively. He's not even paying attention. And then I'm beating people eating my sandwich, and then all of a sudden, I get bit a little bit. Ow! And I didn't know I was beating people with my stick, by the way, but I get bit a little. Ow! And then suddenly I look and I'm like, oh my God, this is a really brutal reality that's going on. I'm hitting people, I'm beating people, it's very violent. And then imagine this. This is the absurdity of what Zizek's doing. Imagine this. Imagine if the conclusion I come to is that, you know what? I was really naive. But instead of saying, I'm going to stop beating these people with the stick, you go, I need to beat them harder so they can't bite me again. I got bit. I need to beat them harder so they can't bite me. Motherfucker, why are you beating them? You get what I'm saying? So yes, Zizek, you were naive and you were in the world of John Lennon's Imagine. What an edgy, what a based take of yours, Zizek. But it seems like you've come to a really weird conclusion from that, which is that what? We need to start, you know what? Fuck you, dude. Fuck you. This is what he's doing. This is what he's fucking doing. He's saying, you know what? We've been a bunch of cuck pussies this whole time. We need to start toughening up. Oh, now you want to be a fucking man? Now you want to fucking toughen up? After you fucking destroyed all traces of humanity and manhood and civilization and culture and customs, after you've spit in the fucking face of all history and tradition and all that shit, now you want to be a fucking nationalist? Now you want to be a real man? You want to be a real traditionalist? And you want to be a fucking whatever? Shut the fuck up, bitch. Your Europe is rotten to the fucking core. Your European Union is rotten to the fucking core. Your NATO is rotten to the fucking core. You want to build some fake simulation of real honorable tradition based on fucking the abstract universalist negative principles of these NATO European institutions, you fucking clown fraud bitch. We all see past you, Zizek. We all see past it. We all see the inauthenticity that grounds your attempt to flirt with this kind of like atavistic impulse of true primitive nationalism. And it's a completely fucking fake. There's nothing primitive about it. There's nothing authentic about it. There's nothing ancient about it, because it takes as its fucking premise the totalizing artifice of European liberal modernity. Thank you, Bodega Man.
Great show tonight.
Thank you, Bodega Man. He's a fucking fraud. Zizek is a fucking fraud. You're such a fucking badass, Zizek. You know what? I'm saying we need to put our big boy pants on now. Oh, now you want to put your big boy pants on after you cut off your own fucking cock. We see past you. Do you want to know why this is infuriating me, guys? Because this inadequacy of Europe is precisely the basis of the position Russia founds itself on. It's Russia that's been saying, no, Europe, you're too naive with your Imagine. No, Europe, you don't have any acknowledgement of positive being or traditions or historical realities. It's an abstract universality. This has been Russia's critique. But now that Russia is responding to your Europe, Zizek, your Europe, your American globalism, your unipolarity, now that Russia's just reacting to you and responding to you, Now you want to put your fucking big boy pants on and start LARPing as a fucking nationalistic traditionalist, right? You fucking fraud. You're a fucking fraud. This is Hitlerite bullshit. It's exactly what the fucking Nazis did. Exactly what fucking Hitler did. We must become a true empire. We must become discards of liberalism. We must become the true German nation. Oh, okay. Now you want to be the true German nation, and you want to be this true ancient primitive thing after you take for granted and take as your basis the nihilistic fucking liberal modernity that has eliminated and destroyed any vestige of authentic positive being of humanity. Now you want to be a fucking that's why Hitler was a bitch and a cuck. That's why Stalin put holes in his fucking head. That's why Stalin cucked Hitler, because he was a bitch. He was a fucking whining little bitch with some shit up his fucking ass, trying to fucking LARP and pretend like he was some great nationalist, when in actual reality, it was all inauthentic. There was nothing authentic about Nazism. Nothing. And Stalin put him in his place. Stalin said, okay, Hitler, you want to critique liberalism and liberal modernity? We'll give you a critique of liberalism, liberal modernity. It's the Soviet Union. Here we have real substance. Here we have real culture. Here we have real civilization. Here we have the real human positive being. Here we have the real nations. Here we have real national culture. Here we have the actual substance. And then, no, I didn't mean it like that, Stalin. I didn't mean it like that. Too bad, bitch. You decided to throw a fucking temper tantrum, then daddy's gonna give you exactly what you fucking wanted. And now Zizek is in a similar position of Hitler. Now Zizek wants the grandeur. And now Zizek says, you know what? It is time to return to Wagner. It is time to return to the true heroism of European nationalism. After you destroyed any semblance of authentic civilization and national reality, you want to fucking LARP as one. With your fucking Reddit empire. Your fake fucking simulation of a human reality. Your Reddit fucking empire. That's what Zizek gives to us. A Reddit empire. A fake, inauthentic simulation of a true reality. Now you want to fucking LARP as nationalists. But it was your universalism that awakened the Russian nationalism. The aggressive universalism you had is what awakened the nationalism of the people in the Middle East and in Russia and elsewhere in the fucking world. And you act like they're the fucking aggressors? Had you from the very beginning just focused on doing your own thing, none of this would have happened. If Europe just focused on being Europe, none of this would have happened. Nobody asked you for John Lennon's Imagine. That's what you don't understand, Zizek. Nobody fucking asked you, Europe, for your John Lennon's Imagine globalist world. Nobody asked you for it in the first place. And that globalist world you were trying to build in the first place is what has given rise to the conflict in Ukraine. If you just did your fucking thing from the start, none of this would have happened. So you don't get to, after all is said and done, get to turn around and be like, you know what? We should be nationalists. No, you don't get to fucking say that, Zizek. You don't get to say that shit. This is exactly what happened in the Second International. This is why Lenin was so mad at these fucking people. Because you should see the pretense of these fucking social chauvinists at the eve of World War I. They were like, the inadequacies of social democracy have made us realize that we must acknowledge defense of the fatherland. And then Lenin said, wait a fucking second. Those inadequacies of social democracy, those were your inadequacies. Lenin clearly saw how this is why he called them opportunists, because Lenin did recognize this was a revolutionary moment during World War I. It was a revolutionary moment. And Lenin saw how these opportunists were hijacking that revolutionary moment and funneling that energy into support for war. For the war. Lenin said, yes, you're right that we are no longer in the naive moment that we were before and whatever. Yeah, you're right about that, Social Democrats. But what that means is that we're in a revolutionary moment now, and we have to oppose this war and use it to our advantage. But they use that same true event as an excuse to do the opposite. So here's the same thing going on. There's an event which clearly marks the beginning of a new world, an unleashing of the primordial chaos out of which the Logos has been born. Russia has awakened the peoples of the whole world. He who does not receive the call of Russia's message is condemned to the pits of fucking hell. Russia, by doing this, has sent a message to the whole fucking world, including in Europe. You must be worthy of the call of this event. This event is a new opportunity of insurrection against American unipolarity, of building a people's polarity, building and reviving each of our unique civilizations, building the Communist Party, building a mass movement, building the popular movement, unleashing the popular energies of the people. That's what Russia's doing in Ukraine gives us the opportunity to do. But what have the elite intellectuals shamefully across the board, including Boris Groys, I just looked it up today, Zizek, all these artists, all these subversive and revolutionary artists, all these intellectuals, all these fucking people who position themselves as these like critical revolutionaries, they're all on fucking board with condemning Russia as barbarians, as savages, as madmen. None of them acknowledge the unique significance of what Russia's doing because they are all clinging to the rotten logos of liberal European modernity. More specifically, let's not even be abstract, the rotten logos of American globalism. They're all clinging to it, and they're building a fortress based on it. They're all clinging to the rotten, smelly, decayed, fucking rotten logos of American globalism. They're hiding behind that. They're scared of Russia because Russia is the voice of the voiceless. Russia is speaking for all of the people who could not articulate their truth within the language of liberal modernity. All of the people who could not articulate their truth within the language of the liberal globalist logos. All of the people who were accursed and disgraced by the fucking liberal institutions of the West. Having no voice, having no truth, having no reality. Russia has given voice to all of them. Russia finally stand up for itself because there's no place for Russia. There's no place for Russian logos. There's no place for the Russian civilization in the world of American globalist liberal modernity. The Russian is dead in this world. The Russian is faceless in this world. The Russian has no existence in this world. So when Russia launched this military operation, Russia is telling the world, we have a voice. We have a reality. And if our voice does not fit in the scheme of your world, then to hell with your fucking world. We are real. We are Russians. If we cannot articulate our speech within your world, we will turn our back on your world. Because we are real. We do have a reality. We do have our own speech. We do have our own reality. This is a revolutionary act. This is an act that speaks for all of humanity. This is the same thing that was represented by Marx's recognition of the proletarian class. That's what the proletariat stood for. The proletariat said, if we, the working class, if our reality does not fit within the language of your bourgeois world, your bourgeois liberal world, we will overthrow your world. We will turn our back on your world. We will build a new world. That's the message of the revolutionary proletariat from time immemorable. And every authentic civilizational awakening is a form by civilization of the being of the proletariat in its class existence.
Z is the answer to imperialism. Z is the answer to fascism. Z is our answer to the West.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Shane Rossi. Thank you so much, Shane Rossi. Thank you, Shane Rossi.
We are standing with Russia. We are standing with Vladimir Putin. We are marching towards Kyiv. _tanky :
Now, when I was in LA, when I was in Los Angeles, and there was word of the possibility of conflict, it was no question for me. No question at all that I would stand with Russia, that I would articulate the speech of Russia in a world for which the Russian has no existence. And why did I want to do this? Why did I want to remain loyal and remain committed to Russia? Is it because I'm being paid as a Russian agent? No. It's because I recognized in this Russian striving to be heard, to be known, to be real, to have being, I recognized in this striving, the striving of the revolutionary proletariat of the whole world, the striving of the peoples and civilizations of the entire world, under the aegis of Anglo-Saxon universalistic globalist modernity, which keeps them under the fucking heel, denies them any reality, denies them any existence, any being. The Russian truth is a mystical truth. The Russian truth is an intuitive truth. It's an unconscious truth. It's not a rational one. It's not a logical one, not an axiomatic one. Why? Because every axiom has a mother. Every axiom comes from a mother that it didn't choose. And the axiom of Europe and of the West as a whole, that comes from the mother Russia. I will defend and fight for Russia as an American patriot living in the West. Our truth as Westerners is Russia. That's our truth. That's the truth of our logos. That's the truth of our rationalism. That's the truth of our modernity. Russia. Anyone who declares themselves an enemy of Russia is an enemy of all humanity. The breakdown of liberal, enlightened humanity. You saw how they started treating Russians. You started how they started treating Russians and everything Russian and all of Russian history in Europe, banning Dostoevsky, ostracizing Russians, attacking Russians, breaking their businesses, threatening them physically, beating them with violence. Russians are no longer human, apparently. You want to know why I stand up for Russians? Because the same shit happened after 9/11 to Muslims. Same fucking shit. And we didn't have anybody standing up for us. They use these, oh, we're scared of these Russians. We don't know what their motivations are. Why would they attack Ukraine? They seem irrational to us. Are Russians dangerous? No, you're irrational. You're irrational. Your European liberal system is irrational. Your world is irrational. Your imperialism is irrational. Your NATO is irrational. You have denied these people, you have denied these Russians their own reality for how long? You kept taking and taking and taking, trying to loot, destroy their country for how long? You denied them any acknowledgement. You denied them any place in your fucking world. And then when they do this, you condemn them as the aggressor after all you fucking done? You created a fake artificial world devoid of humanity, based on the axioms and precepts of pure abstract thought, and abstract rationality, and abstract moral rights, and abstract humanity and human rights, and liberalism. You created this fake world in which any semblance of humanity is condemned and accursed into the fire. Well, now Russia burns and casts to the flame your world. Now your shit is going to the fucking flames. They call the Russians orcs. They dehumanize them. And why is it okay to dehumanize these Russians like Zizek and these other intellectuals are doing? Because the Russian doesn't fit. They're no longer within the frame of what it even means to be a fucking human being, according to the liberal Western universalists. A human being is a redditor. No, because the Russians did this, they're no longer human. They've stepped beyond the bounds of the artificial humanity created by the liberal modern West. I recognize the humanity of the Russian. I insist on the humanity of the Russian. If the Russian don't got humanity, neither does Haas. Neither do I. Because let me tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, if the Russian don't got humanity, neither do you. You, the working class. If that Russian don't got no humanity, you don't got any either. They're going to shut off your fucking bank accounts like Trudeau did to the truckers. They're going to put you in jail. They're going to surveil you. They're going to take away your fucking rights as long as you don't conform to the institutions of these liberal globalist scum. The Russian struggle is our struggle. I was the first to perceive that, the first to recognize that. Zizek is a fraud. He should be totally disgraced for this bullshit he's saying. He's up there in that big club with the rest of these fucking people. He's trying to worm his way back to the fucking liberal establishments. Maybe he's short on money or some shit. You'd have more fucking dignity being a whore, Slavoj. Literally being a fucking whore than doing this shit. If you're low on fucking money, just set up a GoFundMe. Trying to get back in the good graces with the fucking Guardian and the Western newspapers and the press and the fucking institutions and think tanks. You'd have more dignity being a fucking whore. There's no place for Russia in this world. You know, on Twitch, when I started speaking this truth, there was no place for me. Even if I didn't get banned. Cut off everything with everybody. No place for people like me and Jackson. We're not normal anymore. We're not human anymore. All of a sudden, all these people all these people I knew on Twitch, they didn't say a damn word to me. All these so-called friends I had and these networks and contacts, they were afraid. Oh, Haas, you're going too far defending Putin in Russia. I was a black hole on Twitch. You know, so many Twitch streamers wanted me banned because I made them feel uncomfortable. And I kept doing it. I don't give a fuck. This is the truth. Fuck your fake ass world. This is the fucking real world, bitch. I became isolated from that whole network of streamers. Everybody. Totally isolated. Besides Jackson, then Zerka was still chill, you know. But, you know, he gave me the advice to stop doing what I'm doing. Besides that, nobody. Literally almost like maybe there's one or two people, small streamers I can think of. But besides that, you'd think more clout means I'm more popular. No, it didn't mean that. The clout that I was getting on Twitch, that shit was isolating me from everybody. Even these big streamers were like, I think that guy should get banned. Because what I was saying was impossible for them. It didn't fit in their world. I've never been more isolated from society than when I was defending Russia on Twitch. I've never been more isolated. I mean, it's better now because more people have woken up, so I'm cool now. But in those initial stages, guys, I was never more ostracized or isolated in general from the world than that. Like what I was saying was the worst thing in the world. I was never more isolated, ever. From just other human beings, even people who weren't political. It's different now. But I'm not going to forget what happened back then. I'm not forgetting that shit. There's no support anywhere. There's no institution supporting nothing. Even the goddamn Communist Party won't have my back. They're fence-sitting the whole fucking thing. Even those fucking MLs, like Hakim, they don't give a fuck. They said Russia's equally bad. Nobody. We were totally alone, me and Jackson. Totally alone. But you want to know what, chat? It was worth it to me. It was worth it to me. It was 100% worth it to me. Somebody's got to speak that truth. Somebody's got to speak the truth. Regardless of what it does to you in society and all those fucking people. Regardless of what that shit does. Somebody's got to tell the fucking Russian truth. Speak for the soul of the Russian. Because that's a soul worth defending. That Russian civilization, that's a civilization worth defending. Their contribution to humanity, that's a contribution worth defending. And since my youth, that was something I was cognizant of. When I was barely a fucking teenager, when I was 12 years old. When I was 12 years old, I recognized Russia. My whole life has been immersed in Russian history, has been immersed in acquainting myself with the Russian reality. Now, you with an emphasis on the USSR, sure. But that was my whole life, guys. From 12 years old to now. That was my whole fucking life. My whole entrance into adulthood. My whole life. You think I'm going to turn my back on Russia? When I was witnessing what our government and our state was doing in Iraq, when I was witnessing how it was supporting Israel, when I was witnessing the US military machine go unchallenged by everybody in the world, I thought America is invincible. There's no power that could ever challenge America or put it in check, doing all this evil shit that it's been doing. And then I learned about Russia. I learned about the Soviet Union. I learned about how there used to be a world where unipolar globalism didn't prevail. And I learned about those Russians who stood up to the West, stood up to that imperial West. I learned about those Bolsheviks. I was a Muslim. I didn't know anything about Bolsheviks. I didn't know what that meant. I just knew there were some motherfucking Russians that took up some guns and stood up to the fucking imperial West. And I said, wow, they made an entire empire out of that. An empire that existed in defiance of the imperial, nihilistic modern West. That's the friend of all mankind, including Western people themselves. Because we're also victims of this fucking nihilistic, globalist genocide of our cultures. I'm not talking about some fucking racial shit. I'm just talking about our humanity, including against black peoples and against Latino peoples and against minorities as well. We're all victims of this annihilation, this exterminationism of the liberal globalist modernity. All of us. All of our humanity is being put into the fucking meat grinder. Base. Thank you, Daniel.
Thanatos.
Base. Thank you, Jay Grimes.
That the Russians were a sort of unhuman orc has been common in the West well before Ukraine. Just look at the memes made about Russians. Cool, but ultimately dehumanizing.
Based.
Down with Slavoj Zizek aka Chief Bezuo.
Thank you, man. Shout out, man. Appreciate it. I'm glad you got your Twitter back, man. Thank you so much.
Good morning, Revolution.
Good morning, Revolution, Emilio. Thank you so much, man. Did I miss it? Okay, we're good. All right, let's continue this article. Okay, let's continue this shit. That's exactly it. Humanity's a gorilla in the cage. And I saw people asking, what is gorillas and sons mean? Is that some like fascist thing? Is it a fascist thing? That's humanity. Humanity is that King Kong in New York City that's got no place. That's Russia. That's Russia in the West. It's King Kong in that fucking city. Got no place. Crucified on the altar. That dehumanizing alienation of that modern world that everybody's a victim to. The dream of a quick Ukrainian victory. The repetition of the initial dream of a Russian is over. It looks more like a protracted stalemate, progressing, and the ultimate goal is clearly stated. There's no longer any need to read between the lines. All he's fear-mongering about Russia and Putin, saying he's Peter the Great. We should read carefully Putin's justification. I'm not even talking about global leadership, okay? The implication of these lines is that there are two categories of state, the sovereign and the conquered. In Putin's imperial view, Ukraine should fall in the latter category. No, Ukraine is in the fucking latter category. Zizek, which is why it's subordinated to the fucking West. It's not that Russia doesn't need to join alliances like NATO. Ukraine does. So Ukraine doesn't have real sovereignty, according to Ukraine's own fucking logic. And then he says, ultimately, Europe itself falls into the latter category. You know what? I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. All of Europe should be taken by Russia. I'm okay with that. The whole fucking thing. Russians will teach you humanity. Russians will teach you how to have basic humanity toward the rest of the world. You killed 1 million people in Iraq. You fucking destroyed Libya. Your sovereignty privileges are revoked. You don't get to have a big stick anymore. I'm sick of the bullshit. You don't get to have a fucking big stick anymore. Russia should teach you civilization. And this is not Putin's goal. It's what I wish his goal was. It's what I wish his goal was. I don't respect Europe. I'm an American. We Americans built our own fucking country. We have our own country. We have our own ways. We have our own Americanness. But those fucking Europeans have been nothing. Those governments of Europe have been nothing but leeches on our America. It's high time we give them to the Russians. Europe's not a real fucking place. It's just a fucking peninsula of Asia. It's an Asian peninsula. And it belongs to Russia. If this is what you want, Slavoj, if this is what you want, it should be given to you. They keep saying Putin wants to take all of Europe. You know what, Putin? Just fucking do it. Just do it. This is the only thing that's going to stop them. Just fucking do it. Just do it. For fuck's sake, just finally get it over with. Peacefully, of course, but just fucking do it. They always fantasize and fearmonger about Russia just taking over the West. Just fucking do it, Putin. Just do it. Yeah, Putin, just fucking do it. Do it. Just do it, man. You get my fucking okay. As an American, you get my permission. Go ahead and do it. I'm an American citizen. You get my permission. You get my fucking permission. I'm sick of the European arrogance and pretension against both our country and Russia. We Americans have more in common with the Russian than we will ever have with the European. Our American soul is similar to the Russian soul. We are way, way similar to those Russians than those Europeans. With their little ways. Their little ways. We don't have little ways. We have big ways as Americans. Us and the Russians, we believe in bigness and big ways. We don't have time for this little Europeans. We don't have time for that. We believe in bigness. We have the problem of the little ways. In New York, the liberals, and on the East and West Coast, the liberals, with their little ways. They love Europe with their little ways and their social democracy. And their little ways smash the little ways into a billion pieces with the bigness of the civilizational stick. No more little fucking ways. Only bigness moving forward. Bigness of King Kong breaking out of the cage. That's what we fucking believe in. These little liberals with their little ways and their little European ways. So superior to us, right? So superior to us Americans and Russians, right? That's what we're supposed to fucking believe. Holy shit, Emila, thank you so much.
Giving a voice to the voiceless. Thank you so much, Oz. You are so cherished. These liberals are the same ones who view American citizens with violent human contempt. Gorilla, son.
Absolutely.
Gorilla,
thank you
son,
so much, Emila.
Sparkling heart.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you so much.
Sparkling heart. Zizek trying to get back in with the liberals after getting caught plagiarizing from far-right American Renaissance magazine. True story.
Thank you so much for that, but
From
holy
Kiev all the way to
fuck,
Portugal.
Geoff.
Forward.
Thank you so much, Class Analysis. Appreciate you, man.
We're watching you live from the CPI conference in Kansas with Caleb and the gang.
Really? Geoff, thank you so much, man.
Here's to bigness.
Holy fuck, Geoff. Thank you so much, man. Holy shit. Jesus fucking Christ. Thank you so much, man. Holy fuck. Thank you. And hello to Caleb and everybody at the CPI. I know I'm a little bit uncomposed right now, but I'm glad you guys are tuning in. Hope you guys are having a good time. And I don't know if I can announce this yet, so I'll keep it zipped. But no, there's more to come. I'll just say that. Can I say that there's more to come about, you know, my involvement with the CPI? More to come. I think that's all I'll say. But you know, I won't announce anything further. But more to come. You know, more to come. But anyway, yeah, those are great people. Those CPI people, great people. And you know, the CPI people way better than CPUSA, way better people, you know. But yeah, continuing, you know. So he says, we know now what the call to allow Putin to save his face means. It means accepting not a minor territorial compromise in Donbass, but Putin's imperial ambition. The reason this ambition should be unconditionally rejected is that in today's global world, in which we are all haunted by the same catastrophes, we are all in between in an intermediate state, and neither country nor a conquered one. To insist on full sovereignty in the face of global warming is this is rich. This is fucking rich. This is fucking rich. So he's saying no country is fully sovereign. Yes, there are fully sovereign countries. America, China. America and China are fully sovereign countries that can insist on their full sovereignty. Why can't Russia? Why is Russia not capable of doing this? And don't make me laugh at the idea that Europe has sovereignty, because it fucking doesn't. And it knows that. That's why Europe was entering these deals of Nord Stream 2 and the rest with Russia, because they know that Europe and Russia are part of one whole. But American imperialists and globalists came and fucked that up, right? But this is my favorite part. To insist on full sovereignty in the face of global warming is sheer madness. Beautiful. And with a stroke of his pen, Slavoj Zizek reveals the truth of the global warming agenda itself, which is to erode and destroy the sovereignty of states. We can't insist on... Zizek, he's sitting here. My God, we can't insist on sovereignty. The global warming. We must eat the babies. The global warming. You know what, Beetle? Fuck Europe. I don't give a fuck about Europe. How about that? When Europe can stop being cucked, I'll respect Europe. How about that? Stand up for yourself once, and I'll respect you against American imperialism. Once. Until then, kick rocks. As far as I see, Europe's either going to be a pawn of America or it's going to be a pawn of Russia. And the people who are using, in my country, Europe as a pawn, yeah, those are the enemies of my people. Those are the fucking coastal elites that are on the fucking neck of my people. As far as I can fucking tell.
Is it true that nobody, absolutely nobody on the left is pro-Russia, pro-Putin?
Almost no one.
There's only you, Jackson Hinkle and Jimmy Dore. No leftist groups
There's no
whatsoever?
groups. Thank you so much, David Parker. But yeah, there's no groups.
I've been on this train for 18 hours and you're making it tolerable.
Thank you so much for the 5. No, there are groups. It's the CPI, but they're not considered in the left by the majority. CPI is definitely pro-Russia. Got to emphasize that. CPI is 100% pro-Russia. Caleb Maupin was telling the truth about this whole fucking thing before any of us. Before me, before Jackson, even before Jimmy Dore. Because Caleb Maupin is the one who had the analysis about the oil monopolies. So he was there before any of us. I was more philosophical years ago, right? But I wasn't actually putting my face out there and defending Russia the way Caleb was. So, you know, you shouldn't leave him out, you know? Yeah, and then the LaRouche people and the Schiller, but those aren't on the left. You know, they're not considered on the left. So here he reveals his the Malthusian agenda of global warming as the justification, the mysterious justification for why, you know, all countries need a. See, this is Zizek. We must act. Who is we, Zizek? There's no we. There's no fucking we. Okay. There's no international global community to speak of when that community is based on inequality. Zizek's like, my God, forget about the American imperialism. No, we're not going to forget about it, Zizek, because dignity is part of our humanity, and without dignity, we may as well all be fucking dead. It's part of what it means to be a human being. Slavoj. If I have to choose between human dignity and the world becoming extinct from global warming, I choose dignity. Slavoj. We're not just out here living for no reason. Okay? We're not just out here living for no reason. So if you claim that a meteor is going to come and wipe out everything on Earth, fine, let it. Let it. To live with honor is better. To die living with honor is better than to live in a dishonorable way. That's the truth. But I know the European values aren't compatible with that too. I know according to European values, you know, you can just let your wife get fucked by everybody, and you know you don't have any dignity and you don't have any family honor. You're gonna sell out your own parents, you know, and sell them for $10 at Taco Bell because you're high and you have the munchies, and you know you're gonna sell your fucking best friends for $12.50 or some shit because you needed an extra penny to buy your fucking quesadilla at fucking Taco Bell because you got the munchies because you're high off fucking weed, and that's all you fucking give a shit about. That's your Western values, Zizek. Nobody else in the world agrees with it. No one. The rest of the world believes in honor. But Russia doesn't simply ignore global warming. Why was it so mad at the Scandinavian countries when they expressed their intention to join NATO? Now Zizek is saying that NATO is the North Atlantic global warming. It's the North Atlantic combat global warming. Zizek, what are you talking about, you dumb fuck? NATO was created with the express intention of destroying the Soviet Union, and it was expressly created for the purposes of an anti-communist crusade. What are you talking about? With global warming, what is at stake is the control of the Arctic Passage. Due to the explosive development of China, the main transport route will be run north of Russia and Scandinavia. Russia's strategic plan is to profit from global warming, control the world's main transport, plus develop Siberia to control Ukraine. This way, Russia will dominate much food production and will be able to blackmail the whole world. So you're saying Russia insisting on its own sovereign territory, is it blackmailing the whole world? We need to give Europe a slice of the Russian pie, according to Slavoj. We need to give Europe and America a slice of the Siberian pie, otherwise it's not fair. Because the whole world, what is the whole world, you fucking globalist shill full of shit, bitch? Fuck you, Slavoj, fuck you. You can come and try to take a piece of the Russian cake, Slavoj, just like they did in the year 1918, when the Allies decided to come and rob and loot Russia. And what happened? The Red Army beat them back to the fucking Pacific, and they beat them back to continental Europe. And then Hitler tried the same thing, and what happened? You got your fucking nose bloodied and beaten. And I regret the fact that the Russians didn't occupy and take over Slovenia. Too, Slavoj. Want to play this fucking game of national chauvinism? Two can play that game. You're begging for Russia to move into Europe. You're talking crazy right now. You're talking about taking Siberia and taking Russian land. You're gonna get a big ass whooping in store for you, you little European values. Russia will teach Europe a lesson. If Europe lays a pinky on Russian soil, Russia's gonna teach you a fucking lesson. That will be the last lesson you ever get from Russia. This fucking madman, he's using crazy language. He's using language to provoke a nuclear war. This guy is talking about crazy shit. He's ramping up all of the prejudice and lies and myths about Russia to ramp up a fucking nuclear holocaust. That's what Zizek's writing about right now. Nuclear war. Zizek stands for nuclear war. Totally stands for nuclear war. Complete fraud. We need to stop Russia. How are you going to stop Russia without provoking a nuclear war? Slavoj. Those who advocate less support for Ukraine and more pressure on it to negotiate, inclusive of accepting painful territorial renunciations, like to repeat that Ukraine can't win the war. They can't, true, but I see exactly in this the greatness of Ukrainian resistance. So, according to Zizek, it's great that so many people die and perish because they do so knowing they can't win, and that's a great thing, even though they can't win. They defied pragmatic calculations, and the least we owe them is full support. So this is Zizek. If a crazy naked man decides to... a crazy, skinny, 130-pound naked man decides to run up to a 6'8", 500-pound power lifter like the Mountain and just slap his ass a little bit and then run away, and the Mountain chases him, according to Zizek's logic, we should all step in to support the 120-pound skinny little shit because they defied pragmatic calculations and went and fucking started a fight with this giant dude that they would never... They know they couldn't win against this dude, but they decided to fight them anyway, and now we owe it to them to start a nuclear war. That's Zizek's stupid fucking logic right here. That's Zizek's dumbass fucking thinking on full display. That's the most stupid shit I've ever heard. Oh, it's so heroic that they fought knowing they wouldn't win. That's what Zizek, you dumb fuck. They fought with the calculated, pragmatic calculation that we will intervene and support them, you dumb fuck. The only reason there's a Ukrainian resistance, Zizek, is precisely because they think by doing the impossible, they're going to get NATO to come and support them, you dumbass. It's not like they just heroically are fighting Russia with no expectation that the West is going to come save them. They were promised that the West would come help and save them. America kept telling them that. NATO kept telling them that. They were lied to, you dumbass. What a stupid, brain-dead, clueless fucking thing to say. What a clueless thing to say. What a stupid and clueless thing to say. How are you this stupid and naive and detached from reality? The US strategy to counteract through Europe is far from self-evident. Europe becoming the place of the proxy war between the US and Russia, which may well end up by a compromise between the two at Europe's expense. Poor Europe. If only Europe just decided to be independent and go through with Nord Stream 2 and not get on board with fucking burning all bridges with Russia. There's only two places: to play the game of neutrality or to become an autonomous agent. How can it do that if it's part of NATO, Zizek? While some leftists claim the ongoing war is in the interest of NATO, the true message to Ukraine is, okay, you are the victims of brutal aggression. No, it's not what we're saying. We're not saying that to Ukraine. They're not the victims of brutal aggression. The people of the Donbass are victims of brutal Ukrainian aggression. But do not rely on our arms because in this way you play into the hands of the military. And Zizek, we are talking about nuclear fucking war. And you're strawmanning the anti-imperialist position as that this is for profits from the arms. No one serious is saying that. We're not saying this is for the profits of the arms dealers. We're saying this is about the oil monopolies, dumbass. The disorientation caused by the Ukrainian war is producing strange bedfellows like Henry Kissinger and Noam Chomsky, who come from opposing ends of the political spectrum. And Chomsky's actually being kind of based, right? The two stand for the same version of pacifism, which only works if we neglect the key fact. The war is not about Ukraine, but a moment of brutal attempt to change our entire geopolitical situation. And what's wrong with that? Why are you defending our current geopolitical situation when it's come at the expense of non-Europeans and even Europeans themselves? And that's where you're going to hear this, because, ladies and gentlemen, this is not the Zizek you knew. This is a different Zizek. I promise, right? This is going to blow your fucking mind. Zizek is going full Hillary Clinton Russiagate. Watch. The true target of the war is the dismantlement of the European unity advocated not only by US conservatives and Russia, but also by the European extreme right and left. At this point in France, Mélenchon meets Le Pen. So according to Zizek, the extreme left, epitomized by Mélenchon, is playing into Russia's plans to dismantle European unity. Zizek is blaming European populism on Russia. Remember when Zizek supported Trump in 2016? Remember he supported Bernie in 2016 against Hillary? This is not the same Zizek you know. This Zizek is saying that European populism, by the way, the support for which is what gained Zizek notoriety and support and sympathy among so many. He's saying that's just a Russian plot to dismantle the great European unity. It's not that the European unity is collapsing under the weight of its own contradictions. It's Russiagate. It's the pathological anti-Semitic fucking idea that it's not your own shit that's fucking up. It's an external agent who's fucking it up. That's what Zizek's saying about the Russians. The craziest notion floating around these days is that to counter the new polarity between the US and China, Europe and Russia should rejoin and form a Eurasian bloc based on the Christian legacy purified of its liberal excess. The very notion of a Eurasian third way is the form of today's fascism. Why? So, okay, according to Zizek, Eurasianism is the form of fascism today, not the Azov battalion, not neo-Nazi white supremacists who believe in a revival of European supremacy against the Asiatic horde of orcs, which is ad verbatim what the Nazis were all about. The real fascism is actually Eurasianism, according to Zizek. That's what he's trying to tell us. I can't believe anybody takes this fucking clown seriously. I really can't. I'm at a loss for why anyone would take this fucking guy seriously. I am sincerely at a loss. So what will happen when voters in Europe and America, faced with soaring energy costs and broader inflation driven by sanctions against Russia, might lose their appetite for a war that seems to have no end, with needs that are expanding as both sides head for a protracted stalemate? The answer is clear. At that point, the European legacy will be lost, and Europe will be de facto divided between American and Russian sphere of influence. Okay, so according to Zizek, in order for Europe to remain united, it needs to just completely submit to America, or else it will be divided by both America and Russia. So that's what Zizek's saying. In order for Europe... Thank you, Chris.
Klaus Schwab could have wrote this article.
This is worse than what Klaus Schwab would say. And this is the truth, guys. Leftists will always become the worst fascists. Worse than even the fascists could even imagine, right? But look what he's saying. He's saying in order for Europe to stay Europe, it needs to just submit to America. Otherwise, it's going to be divided between America and Russia. What kind of cuck says this? So let me explain that in other terms, right? So a colonial country should not declare independence, because if it declares independence, it will become divided by other powers. So we should just remain a That's like saying in the American Revolution, America shouldn't become independent because then it'll become divided by France and Britain. What the fuck are you talking about? What a cuck. Submit to America or we're going to become divided by America and Russia. But you're already fucking controlled by America. What do you have to lose? What is absolutely unacceptable for a true leftist today is not only to support Russia, but to make a more modest neutral claim. When a country's occupied, is the ruling class that is usually bribed to collaborate? Well, it's not what's going on because the oligarchs in Ukraine are anti-Russian. Same can go for the struggle against racism. In a state of racial tension and exploitation, the only way to struggle effectively for the working class is to focus on fighting racism. This is why any appeal to the white working class, as in today's alt-right populism, is this Terran? Remember when Terran heckled Zizek? Because Zizek was the only guy to defend the so-called white working class against identity politics? Remember when he used to do that? And then Terran... This is what happened. Zizek got fucking bitched out by Terran Fivek. He got fucking whipped by Terran, and now Zizek is indistinguishable from Terran Fivek, the woman that heckled him at Left Forum around 2015 or 16. Well, now he's saying it's an alt-right populism to focus on the class struggle rather than focus on identity politics. Guys, this isn't the same Zizek that you know. This is a renegade. This is a traitor. He's fucking totally sold out. It's not the same Zizek you know. It's not. Okay. Today, one cannot be a leftist if one does not unequivocally stand behind Ukraine. To be a leftist who shows understanding for Russia is to be like the leftists who, before Germany attacked the Soviet Union, took seriously German anti... What are you talking about? How is that a meaningful comparison at all? If he's comparing Russia to Germany, except I can compare you to Hitler, Zizek, because you are representing liberal in its emergency powers mode. That's literally Hitlerite fascism. You're demonizing Russians as uncivilized barbarians. If the left will fail here, the game is over. So what are you saying practically speaking, Zizek? Let's just turn out and fucking shill for war, for nuclear war? What are you actually practically telling us to do, Zizek? That the left should typically take to the West. Now Zizek's nuance comes. No, we should recognize that the invasion of Iraq was also bad for some reason. But then it's only going to be a couple of years until Zizek is like, you know what? The invasion of Iraq was justified because, Saddam represented a geopolitical threat to the West. He represented, a new Russian world and he was a puppet of Russia and their global ambitions. So in order to protect European values in the West, we had to invade Iraq. I think Zizek is like a year from saying that. He's going to say that in like a year or two, probably. On the day I'm writing this, we learned from the media, so while putting Bush on trial is no less illusory than putting Putin to the Hague trial, the minimum to be done who opposed the Russian invasion is to demand Assange's immediate release. Russia claims it fights for the rest of the world against Western unipolar hegemony, which it objectively does. Both claims should be rejected, and here the difference between the right and left enters the stage. From a rightist standpoint, Ukraine fights for European values against the non-European authoritarians. But from the leftist standpoint, Ukraine fights for global freedom, inclusive of the freedom of the Russians themselves. That's why the heart of every true Russian patriot beats for Ukraine. Now, Zizek has just demonstrated the complete meaninglessness of of what left and right mean within the context of being pro-imperialism. These are the left and right wings of the globalist imperialist agenda of Western unipolarity. You can cope about it all you want. You can have the Azovites, who are exterminationist neo-Nazis, or you can have the LGBT flag wielding, freedom fighters who are fighting for global freedom, whatever the fuck that means. But they're two sides of the same coin, and they're under the axis of the same primary contradiction, which is to stop and exterminate Russian civilization. Now, they may justify it and articulate it in different ways. That is objectively their primary contradiction, is supporting U.S. imperialism against Russia. Great analysis, Zizek. No mention of the significance of oil, no mention of the Western oil monopolies and Western unipolarity being threatened by Russia's sovereign oil economy. No mention of any of that shit. No mention of, the oligarchs within Russia who are against Putin on this project. Nothing like that. Just some vague diatribe about how Ukraine fights for global freedom, which means what, Zizek? What does global freedom mean? Well, I'm going to briefly talk about the origins of this Zizek and how he came to this point, how he came to this conclusion. Before I do that, I'm going to take a piss, so I will be right back, okay? All right. So there's shit going on in the Communist Party of Canada that I think I'm gonna talk about that tomorrow, alongside some other stuff. So watch that space, I guess, right? Might even hold a Twitter space about it. But in the meantime, guys, I gotta eat. I'm gonna eat right now, and then we are gonna get into the philosophical portion of today's discussion. Sorry, today's stream. We're gonna get into the thing about how I talk about how everything got to this point. So hopefully someone's gonna timestamp the stream, so like it's not gonna be a problem in the VOD. But I gotta eat, guys. I gotta eat. Oh my god. Oh my god, this is loaded. Is falafel good for you? This is falafel. Is it good for you or is it bad for you? It's deep fried? Did you just say it's deep fried? It's too late. I already started eating it. Alright, I'm gonna finish this sandwich and we're done. And then I'm gonna get into the part. Mmm.
The metaverse is the future of the internet, and while Mark Zuckerberg is planning to dominate this space, remember how he changed Facebook's name to Meta last year? Something is brewing on the other side of the planet that could completely derail his plans. Last year, Morgan Stanley wrote a note to its investors that China's metaverse on its own could grow to become an $8 trillion industry. In the past year alone, more than 1,000 companies, including heavyweights such as Alibaba and Tencent, have applied for over 10,000 metaverse-related trademarks, and even the Chinese government has formed the Metaverse Industry Committee. In the future, we're going to see a major battle between the United States and China on who can build the future of the internet. But China has an incredible advantage that no one else in the world does. China is currently building the world's first 6G network, and this could be the game changer that allows China to dominate the future of our internet. Let's break it all down in today's video. Now, what exactly is
Fuck, I swallowed a pill. Fuck. Guys, I just fucking did something bad. Give me Sorry I took so long, guys. I actually apologize. All right, I took neutral. It's not like a drug pill. It's like a Nutrafol, right? And I'm doing it because it helps me sleep. But I don't want to talk about that, right? It's like a nutrition pill. And like the capsule opened up with the powder and it got all over my mouth and beard and shit, so I had to just clean my shit off. But yeah, it's like a nutritional supplement type of thing. But anyway, I want to talk about the how did we get here with Zizek, right? Well, I want to first talk about Zizek's project, which has done more than basically try to establish the homology or some kind of underlying logos defining the relationship between Lacanian psychoanalytic theory and Hegelian philosophy. Zizek actually does something more, which I find extremely ugly and grotesque, which is basically say that Lacanian psychoanalysis and the structure of, let's just call it the structure of human subjectivity. I guess that's the best way to put it. The structure of human subjectivity, which Lacan discovers, is not only reproducing some underlying logic, fundamental logic of the Hegelian philosophy, dialectical philosophy, but that it is Hegel's philosophy. That Lacan is Hegel, basically, is Zizek's gesture, right? So, Hegel is dealing with these kind of, the impartial form of Platonic ideas. And by ideas, I just mean the ideas relevant to philosophy. The disinterested idea of philosophy. Not necessarily the disinterested variable of logic within analytic philosophy. I'm not saying like Hegel was like a Robert Brandom type of guy. But Hegel is definitely dealing with the disinterested and stoic form of the idea. And the inconsistency or consistency thereof as the foundation of his philosophy. Now, after philosophy, Sigmund Freud kind of discovers a little scandalous, significance of the unconscious and how human beings, they're somehow motivated by these pathological realities and drives and depth drives and instincts, the ID and so on and so on. And, we somehow project this screen of fantasies and, dreams and whatever, which are more than what we define them as consciously, right? Or explicitly. Like, for example, the Freudian discovery is kind of like how you can kind of have this fantasy of, I want to be the captain of a ship. I want to be the admiral of a ship. Now, a philosopher might look at that and they'll be like, okay, you want to be the captain of the ship. And they'll think of that in terms of like, is that because you want to sail the seas? Is that because you want to, you want to go on the ship and kind of like, feel the might of the ship, and I don't fucking know. You like sailing boats or something? That's what a philosopher will say, or a conscious, rational analysis of that will be. And Freud will be like, someone's like, oh, I want to sail on a ship, and Freud will be like, yes, and the reason you want to do this is actually because you secretly like putting fucking water bottles in your ass. Some shit like that, right? So that's Freud. That's what Freud does. Freud basically shows this element of the pathos, right? That defines how we start to have pathological relationships with the stories we tell ourselves that allow us to cope with reality, right? Or our dreams. Our dreams somehow have... And he does this by beginning with dreams, right? He does this by beginning with dreams. Like, what is a dream? It's clearly not something we can define on conscious, rational terms. And then Freud is basically, he's beginning with the dream as the fulfillment of the unconscious wish. And then he moves to the dream to the pathos about the ways in which we repeat, various forms of behavior. We repeat and are somehow stuck on specific forms of these fundamental fantasies that we need to cope with reality, that keep rearing, that you have these symptoms, in other words, right? Now, Freud basically deals with all this, and he comes to the conclusion that there's this underlying drive, right? There's underlying drive defining the human psyche itself and in human beings themselves in terms of what animates their desires and motivations general, right? The raw material out of which all these fantasies are being created. And Freud basically says, he defines it as the death drive. And he actually locates this in a very interesting way at the intersection of biology and geology, which is what I find great about Freud. Something actually lacking in Lacan is this, I think, right? Freud basically says that at the very outset of the origin of life itself, an organism, or a single-celled organism, develops a membrane. It develops something that differentiates itself from its own environment. Not in order to protect itself from that environment, but just to distinguish itself from that environment. For Freud is dealing with like the laws of thermodynamics, in which every single thing is tending toward entropy, right? Every single thing in the universe every system tends toward entropy. So Freud, he begins with the second law of thermodynamics as like a fundamental law of the cosmos, which was true for the scientists at the time. It's a fundamental law of the cosmos animating every and all things. Everything tends toward entropy, right? So what Freud basically does is that he develops how somehow through the primordial soup of geological, whatever, plate tectonics, right? An organism somehow develops a membrane that distinguishes itself from this flux of movement that tends toward entropy, right? And what Freud said is that ever since that happened, the organism is still tending toward entropy, except it now has a detour toward that in the form of its membrane. And that the organism has this primordial striving toward annihilating itself and destroying itself. And that it derives a pleasure principle from the way in which the membrane that separates the single-celled organism from its environment, right? When that membrane comes into contact with its environment, it gets stimulated, right? And for Freud, that stimulation, the effect of the organism in the process of tending towards death and tending towards annihilation, that's the origin of pleasure. That's how we derive pleasure, right? Lacan, basically, he calls this organism Freud describes, which is like the pure death drive, an organism in its pure death drive. Freud describes that, Lacan will describe that as that lamella. It's like an obscene lamella. It's like this strange partial object tending toward its own annihilation. So from that, Freud derives the basic underlying drive of all human desire and motivation. More or less at the end of the tunnel of all of our desires and fantasies and sexual desires and all that kind of stuff is an underlying death drive. We have this death drive where we want the sensations that excite our tendency toward entropy and annihilation. We want those to be excited. And by exciting those sensations, we're deriving pleasure of some kind, right? So it's a very dialectical kind of understanding of, what do we want? We want to not be, right? You think we want to be something or we want something? No, For Freud, at the core of human desire and motivation is annihilation of ourselves. So that is the Freudian death drive, okay? And Freud grounds all desire and all human motivation in an intersection of biology and cosmotechnics and geology, basically, right? Okay. So for Freud, we human beings pretend to be rational, right? Pretend like we have rational motivations that are grounded in ideals. And Freud says, no, our motivations are biological. They're rooted in this primordial, origin of life itself. Now here comes Lacan, Jacques Lacan. And Lacan is, he's emerging fresh in the post-war, intellectual scene, having gone through thinkers like Heidegger, Kojève, and Sartre. And all those thinkers have in common is this debiologization of meaning, right? Freud kind of, in a way, ends up reducing meaning to biology. But because of Heidegger's critique of Freud would be something like, right? Freud is inserting a specific form of natural scientific knowledge. It's like the essence and basis of our human motivations. And that's clearly bullshit, right? Freud is saying like, oh, you have this ideal structure of the world. Actually, that's rooted in the second law of thermodynamics. And Heidegger will respond to that kind of, and I don't think he does it directly. I don't know if he does, but he would respond to that by saying something like, that's bullshit, Freud, because you're just inserting another man-made construct, which is natural science, the natural scientific structuration of being. You're inserting that as like the basis and motivation for people's things that are on the surface. So you're still not going to the real being, what really motivates us and animates us. So that's Heidegger's rejection of natural science in general. And then Kojève will kind of take what Heidegger's saying and he'll kind of twist it in a way that is reconciled with Hegel. Kojève will be like, Heidegger, you're right about this question of being that I've explained to you before, yada, yada, yada. That, instead of this kind of reductive view, our humanity is based on some. So Heidegger is basically saying our humanity and our world of meaning is based on a specific disclosure of being to us, right? And it's in the form of language. Language is the house of being. And Kojève will basically be like, yes, Heidegger, but also Hegel had something to say that's significant about this, which is that being that is being disclosed to us in question, that being has a history. That being somehow, is spiraling across and through time, dying and living and reproducing itself, yada, yada, yada. And that's what Kojève will say. And then Sartre, give me a second. Shit in my throat. Give me a sec. Okay, so Sartre will basically he's not coming from Kojève, but he also responds to Heidegger by saying something like, yes, Heidegger, you're right, but the way in which we relate to this being that you're talking about is individual, right? And therefore, we're faced with, that's Sartre's existentialism. Like, how do we as human beings come to represent ourselves and our own image of ourselves, right? And our own sense of selfhood and the question of, like, our existence and yada, yada, yada. So on the one hand, we have a historical dialectical twist onto Heidegger from Kojev, and then on the other hand, from Sartre, we have like an individual subjectivization of Heidegger. That's in the form of existentialism, right? It's very individualistic. You know what? I'm banning all schizo posting. I just don't have the patience for it. So schizo poster J Dalier, you have to get the fuck out of here, and you gotta take a break. Your schizo shit is just, it's distracting everybody from the actual lecture I'm trying to do. By the way, guys, I'm so sick of giving lectures and then retards come in my chat and just give random schizo spam. Like, this is everyone's just because I'm operating outside of the bounds of some like formalistic academic, manner of presentation. That's not your excuse to come and start all the clowns come and start waving their, if Haas is saying something that I can't understand, then all meaning must break down. We have to just start talking about random schizo shit. Dude, shut the fuck up. I'm actually trying to say something meaningful here. Okay? Yeah, and then we're just gonna mods ban everybody who's spamming anything. If anyone spams anything, just ban them for the rest of the lecture. So I'm hiding, perma ban them too. Okay? Yeah, get this fucking bitch out of here. Okay, so here comes Lacan, right? I'm skipping a lot of shit. So Lacan is looking at what Heidegger, Kojev, yada 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 are doing and saying, and then Sartre. Lacan is also kind of here, and he's like, wait, there's something in Freud too. Now, Freud might have grounded his discovery in, the second law of thermodynamics, and that might have been a mistake, some substantial natural scientific thing. That might have been a mistake, but Lacan says, no, but that's not what Freud discovered. Freud discovered he discovered something more fundamental about language and about human subjectivity and about all these things and about ultimately about our being, right? So Lacan is looking at what Kojev said and said, okay, the same way Kojev can reconcile Hegel with Heidegger and give that Hegelian addition, to Heidegger. Lacan insists on doing the same for Freud. He says there's a fundamental logos within Freud that is relevant about how our being discloses itself to us, what the nature of that being is for us. Okay, and Lacan basically he will kind of conclude that what Freud discovers is that the unconscious is structured like a language. There's a structure of the unconscious. So Lacan is not so much interested in Freud's kind of like primordial myths about the origins of life and of desire and all this stuff, as much as Lacan is concerned about the specific discontinuity Freud discovers between consciousness and the unconscious. There's a structure there. It's structured like a language, okay? So, but since Lacan is beginning from this, he's obviously going to take a lot from Sartre, right? Because Sartre is also subjectivizing and individualizing Heidegger in a way that Kojev does not, right? So this is why Lacan begins with his mirror stage. Lacan is famous for that. He begins with this theorization of how like an infant is born and then grows up and kind of has a stage where the sole and exclusive relationship to being in general is the mirror, right? Through their own image of self, establish an exclusive relationship with. So, but Lacan still maintains the thrust of Freud's kind of idea of death drive, except this time Lacan doesn't locate death drive in some like substantialistic natural scientific view about thermodynamics. Lacan decides to locate death drive just in some kind of discontinuity. some kind of difference inherent to being, right? Just because being is inconsistent, we have a death that attests to some death drive that defines our subjectivity, and it's not based on, you know, some primordial organism. It's a fact that discloses itself in the form of our symptoms, and it's like the drive we have is a drive that is desubstantialized and represents the negativity at the heart of being itself. A negativity even beyond negativity. I'm not going to get into it, right? So, okay, that's an adequate description. Now, Slavoj, what Slavoj does is he basically, he takes what Lacan says, and he takes all the conclusions Lacan came to, and he said, my God, this is the same as Hegel, because it ultimately obeys the same dialectical structure. And Zizek then develops this vision, this project, according to which both Hegel and Lacan have this fundamental structure, let's call it a logos, this dialectical logos, because they are trying to say something about being as such. So Zizek's project is an ontological project. But the mistake Zizek makes, pervertedly, right, is he says philosophy is the privileged form in which this being is to be accessed and given and described, right? Lacan, Zizek basically comes to the conclusion that the form of reflexivity we have and we arrive at, the form of reflexivity that we conclude with in being able to describe this inherent constitutive gap at the heart of being is itself a result of that being and is the fundamental and final conclusion of it. So there we go. Zizek kind of repeats the Hegelian absolute knowledge, which is at the end of his philosophy, which is basically that my description of being is itself the ultimate form of that being. So in this way, Zizek then has a lot to clean up, right? That death drive for Lacan perversely just becomes something that attests to the truth of his reflexive description, his reflexive descriptive ontology, right? So Zizek perversely tries to say, like, all of the pathological elements within Lacan and within psychoanalysis, yeah, those are just because of some sovereign, rational, philosophical truth. There's no pathos, only logos. That's what Zizek insists upon. Every semblance and trace of this dirty pathological element, Zizek will be like, no, that's following some rational, logical structure. And he gives description to that structure in the form of his ontological project. Okay? So, what does that have to do with his... I'm just going to cut to the chase. What does that have to do with his recent stance on Ukraine? Well, before we get to his stance on Ukraine, I want us to get to his stance on the French Yellow Vest movement in 2018. He condemned the Yellow Vests. Why did he do that? He was skeptical towards them. He was ambivalent towards them. That shocked me, right, back in 2018. Well, since Zizek is privileging rational philosophical reflexivity as the privileged form by which we can relate to the true nature of reality, he must account for the premises of that philosophical reflexivity. The premises of that philosophical reflexivity is, of course, rational statehood and the rational order of not only the world in general, but of the European Union and American globalist unipolarity in particular. In the same way that Zizek privileges philosophy, just like Hegel, he also privileges the institutions of the existing state as the privileged medium by which the universality of humanity can be given expression. Which is why Zizek is always saying, what are the solutions we must do? What was we do, right? What Zizek means by we is, of course, the we of the institutional community and reflexivity of the European Union or of the European statehood or of American globalist institutions. He begins with this as his subjective position enunciation. That for him is the subjective position of enunciation, right? Kind of similar to Hegel, right? And so for Zizek, when you had these outbursts of street demonstrations, Occupy Wall Street, and civil unrest within Europe and America, he was the kind of theorist of these things, and he was sympathetic towards them. The reason he was sympathetic towards them is because he saw this in this chaos under heaven, let's just call it, this civil turmoil. He saw this a truth in the moment of the higher synthesis of some kind, which is the form of the European statehood and the European Union, yada, 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 the American globalist institutions. And so he was sympathetic towards them, right? But we can see how that whole Arab Spring and Occupy Wall Street and all the shit that Zizek became popular from giving, sympathy to and guiding and giving descriptions to, all of those eventually turned out to be moments in the emergence of this like American globalist internet and American consolidation of globalism and the culture of the European Union. We saw how the Arab Spring played into the hands of American plans for the Middle East, right? Color revolutions. The turbo color revolution arises from this ambiguous discontent. And this same globalist institution, let's call it the institution, the globalist institution, that all of this turmoil served as the mere realization of, at the expense of the local, parochial, kind of antiquated post-war European and American states, that is Zizek's universal state, the globalist institution. The one that Zizek says we must use to fight climate change and global warming. Mein Gott, we have common problems. We must address these problems in a universal way. Well, the universal way is, of course, American globalist universalism, right? The deep state. Let's just call it the World Economic Forum, right? So Zizek, he has a different attitude when the yellow vests come, and we, infrared, took note of this. The yellow vests were not simply like Occupy Wall Street. Oh, and sorry. Then when Bernie Sanders comes around and Syriza and these kind of social democrats, Zizek is sympathetic to them because in them he sees, an institutionalization of the discontent. And Zizek is he begins from the institution. He begins from the kind of, if something does not take the form of an institution, for Zizek it's completely meaningless and has no reality. So these fail. Then the yellow vests come around. And the yellow vests, similar to Occupy Wall Street, are a leaderless form of discontent. But the yellow vests were different. Why? Because these working class French people who are protesting Macron's taxes on gas, they had the burden of structure. They had the defect of form. Not institutional form, but form. Some type of form that cannot be described within the language of what Dugan calls Western logos. Why? The French, why were they called the yellow vests, first of all? Because these weren't just people that went to Occupy Wall Street and ran around on the street destroying shit. These were French people who got out of their cars, opened their trunks, and took out these state-mandated yellow vests that every French driver needs to have in their car, put these vests on, signaling it's a crisis and it's an emergency. The French, they make you have this yellow vest in your trunk because if your car breaks down or something, you're supposed to wear it to signal to police or something where you are. But since they saw the fuel taxes as a crisis, they took these yellow vests and put them on. So they have a form somehow. This is the French people that had taken as their basis some French statehood. But the reason this is not an institutional form of popular discontent is because they are using the vest for an entirely different reason than the institution wanted for them. So on the one hand, they have form. This is clearly an indication of Frenchness. Only a French working class citizen who drives a car has this yellow vest. So this is a specific form of the people. It's not like the anonymous, deterritorialized agent of Occupy Wall Street or Black Bloc or some ambiguous crowds of protesters. This has a specific national form. But it somehow cannot fit within the logic, the logos of the Western institutions. Now, the Western mind, like the mind Zizek has two realities, right? Form in the institution, and then pure negativity of content. Just like Zizek for Lacan, death drive is just negativity, inconsistency. Same thing for them. What they cannot grasp is Lacan's synthon. They cannot grasp the possibility of a form in the real itself. They cannot grasp the possibility of a positive quality and character of the people that cannot be cannot be known through the logos, one, cannot be given representation by the universal modern liberal institutions of statehood, moreover, cannot be premised by some kind of institutional mediation of collective action. So three things. So Zizek is disgusted by the yellow vests. He says because Zizek can't reduce them to a specific demand, but he also can't reduce them to some hysterical subject that doesn't know what they want. He's at a deadlock. He can't use the critique of Occupy Wall Street against the yellow vests. Because yellow vests do have a positive quality, do have some quality of substantial national reality, something like that. So this combobulates his mind, and he decides to reduce to them yellow vests. He condemns them for not articulating their demand in the form of a party or anything like that. He also condemns them for getting in the way of the plans to stop climate change. So he condemns the yellow vests. He's against the yellow vests. What is the origin of this? The origin of this is Zizek. It lies in his attempt to domesticate pathos within the philosophical logos. It all has its origins in the way he tried to domesticate Freud's insight through Lacan back into the philosophy. Just in the same way, Zizek must deny the yellow vest because the subject of statehood, the working class, must be immediately re-assimilated and reintegrated into the existing form of the universal modern liberal state. Same exact thing. What Zizek does for Lacanian pathos, he also did to European populism and American populism. Deny it any positive, substantial reality itself. Just reduce it to a moment of negativity in the development of the positive being of universal statehood, which itself, as Marx pointed out in his critique of Hegel, is itself devoid of substance. It is itself the organization. See, Marx's critique of Hegel was very intelligent, unlike the stupidity of Zizek's strawman. Marx was trying to say, Hegel, you reduce, this is what Marx tells to Hegel. Hegel, you reduce, let's say, substantive humanity as a moment of negativity that culminates in the universal state. But Marx raises a problem. He says, your universal state is itself nothing but negativity. It itself is so it's not the negation of So for Marx, negation of negation is just negation again. You don't actually arrive at a proper sublation into some... When I say substantive, I don't mean in a naive, phenomenal, or empiricist sense. I just mean in the sense of something in the real. Something in the real. And this question of something in the real was the thrust of late Lacan's work. Lacan posed the question of, since the synthome is in the real, how does a human being come to express a relationship to it? Lacan says our relation to the synthome is a matter of faith. Why must Lacan say it's a matter of faith? He says it's a matter of faith because there are inadequacies in the form of knowledge we can have of the real. The synthome, the structure within the real, the yellow vest, in other words, the French yellow vest populist. Lacan says, I'm paraphrasing Jacques Miller, Lacan says, on the one hand, there's a question of knowledge in the real. Can we know the synthome? Do we know the synthome? Do we have knowledge of the synthome? But then Lacan says, if we can have knowledge of the synthome in the real, that means the God of the philosophers must be real. There must be some kind of ultimate principle, the God of the philosophers, who sustains knowledge of the real, that there is knowledge inscribed in the real. If there is knowledge, ladies and gentlemen, inscribed in the real, if there's a being that can know something in the real, even before we know it, the God of the philosopher must be real. But then Lacan shifts to another interesting question. What about, forget about the question of knowledge in the real, of the synthome. What about meaning in the real? What about the question of whether the synthome in the real attests to some meaning there? Not knowledge, just meaning. Meaning in the real. An inherent meaning in the real, in the form of the synthome. An inherent real meaningfulness of the synthome. Lacan says, if this is true, then it's not the God of the philosophers that's real. It's the God of Abraham. It's the God of religion. So Lacan concludes, at the end of his life, he says, there are two possibilities for the future. Either science or religion will win. For Lacan, science represents knowledge in the real. For Lacan, religion represents meaning in the real. And Lacan, because he cannot parse out the significance of the synthome in the real, because he comes to this intellectual deadlock, he inscribes this as a deadlock of world history itself and says, either one or the other is true. And the fact that I cannot move beyond these two possibilities, God of the philosopher or God of the Abraham, humanity itself is going to have to deal with this. You're going to have to deal with confronting the real. And you're going to either take refuge in science to do it, knowledge, or you're going to take refuge in religion to do it, faith. We don't get any of this from Zizek. Zizek is neither the philosopher or the priest. Zizek's a pervert. And when I say pervert, I mean Lacanian sense. He says, this is not a real problem because of the structural homology of Lacan, what Lacan is saying and what Hegel is saying, that this is something real in being itself, and that actually philosophy has the privileged significance, philosophical knowledge. So Zizek is on the side of the God of the philosopher. But why he doesn't take refuge in modern science is because Zizek's philosophy ends up being an apologia for the modern science. He will never boldly question the scientific establishment in any way. He will just assume it's completely correct and try to provide a philosophy that makes this consistent. So Zizek basically rejects anything inherent in the real that is outside of the bounds of the God of philosophy. Just like Hegel. But he does it in a really perverted way, convoluted way, unlike Hegel. So, all Zizek would have had to do is very simple. Recognize that there is an antecedent meaningfulness in the real before there is a knowledge of it. Philosophy does not have privileged significance in relation to the real. The real itself has a privileged significance in relation to the real. If the real itself has a privileged significance in relation to a real, there is a meaningfulness in the real. There is meaning in the real, or we should say, our meaning, our sense of meaning is real. If our sense of meaning is real, then the world of humanity somehow is meaningful again. The way in which we reproduce ourselves is antecedent to the philosophical abstraction from it in thought. Here we redeem Marx. Or we give justice to Dugin, who is unfairly maligned by people like Zizek. Because what would Dugin say? Dugin would say, the French yellow vests represent the need to derive a philosophy out of chaos because of Logos' principle of exclusion. It excludes the French yellow vests because they seem to derive from some chaos, some substantive chaos that is outside of the bounds of the Western Logos. So for Dugin, the only way in which we can recognize things outside of the Logos is by re-deriving the Logos out of the chaos from which it came, from which it was derived. But the problem with Dugin, of course, he does not care about the determinateness of the real. He just calls the real the chaos. But the greatness of Dugin, and this represents Russia's structural position in the world, by the way, is defense. There is something there in chaos. It's not just nothing. It's not just nothing, like Zizek says, negativity and inconsistency and contradiction. No, there is something there. Now that somethingness is non-all. It doesn't take the form of a specific form of thought or form of rational axiom. It's not like a perversion where you're inserting a fantasy in the real. But there is somethingness. There's a somethingness there. It's an originative somethingness. The somethingness of what is here is there. The somethingness of what is here is there in chaos. The somethingness in the here of Logos is in the there of chaos. That is what Dugin says. That's why he's a heroic thinker who has much more courage, much more brilliance than Zizek. Dugin will respond to French yellow vests saying, no, fuck this European institutions. There is something there in those yellow vests. That is the truth of France. The French people, as they are, they have condemned the French state. Their existence, their being, condemns the universalism of the European Union and the French state, the beating heart of the French people, putting on those yellow vests to assert their being in the same way Russia asserts its being in Ukraine, in front of the whole world. Okay. There it is.
What's up? Did you think about me? 2013. Sick kid. Damn. Just win. For all the broken hearts that got blamed. What we gon' do? We gon' say goodbye. Spending my arms with you, put my trust in you. Movie tickets for two, girl, I wind you, I guide you, spend my life to find you. I was there for you when you needed me the most, but when my time came, you faded out. Ghost. In the end, I should've known you were just a heartbreak. I'ma call you Medusa, cause you was just a snake.
Listen to my acapella. Girl, I go higher than the weekend's 4-star. Baby, I'm